Hey everyone, Siva here. Um, Today I would like to talk about databases, in particular, uh, the database, the general basics of the database. I'll start with, there's a reason why we want to know the basics of anything. The fundamentals matter when it comes to, let's say, you're going to support a database as a database administrator. You will need to uh, know about the fundamentals of how the databases are functioning. So then you would be able to know exactly what's going on, um, and it would be pretty helpful to resolve the issues, troubleshoot stuffs, and you know do those necessary uh, changes in the database to create the objects, to create the tables, and handle the queries, deal with performance issues. There's so much more, but underlying everything is you have to know basics. And so, without dragging it a little further, let me start with you know what is a database. So you have a website. Let's say you have a website, such as Amazon. Let's take Amazon, and there's an order entry taken. You go and check out the products. For example, you choose a particular product. Let's say you want to buy an iPhone, for say, and you order it through the Amazon. You go and check out in the cart, and when you click on the order is placed. You pay for the order. You know this is what you see in the front end. But what happens behind the scenes is where database comes into the picture. So behind the scenes, whatever the information you have entered over there, it gets stored somewhere in a system called as a database. So that information, what product, from where you ordered, what time you ordered, and what is the cost of the order, and information about shipping, all of them get stored, especially the user information. Uh, like if you are the Amazon user, you have a user ID and a password that also gets stored in the database. So this is the simplest example I can give about database. There are so many instances. Database is the core of everything. So you need to essentially store the data somewhere. Let's say even simpler example is, let's say you open a notepad and you type something and you save it somewhere as a file, and then you open it later. Whatever you have saved, you open it later and you're viewing the contents. This is why can't you call that as a database? It's a flat file, but still it's the closest thing you can start with to know what a database would practically be like. uh, Look, I don't want to bore you with all those um, too much of technical information. So I'm giving you pretty practical examples of what a database is. And the simplest database I can give you is the Microsoft Access, uh, but even simpler would be the Microsoft Excel. It's almost like a half form database, you can say. Uh, so if you open an Excel sheet, it's divided into rows and columns. You put in all the information, and then you can do sort. You can sort it in ascending or descending, or you can do some calculations based on the values you entered in certain fields, and you can derive through a formula, or you can do a whole lot of stuff in the Excel sheets. So except that the amount of data is small. Like you could store a certain amount of information only. It's limited. But when it comes to the database, you can store a lot of information. Like, I'm talking in terms of uh, several gigabytes. It could range from gigabytes to several terabytes and even petabytes. So there are some extremely, uh, you know, some extremely configured database, highly configured high-tech databases that can even handle petabytes of information, such as Amazon's Redshift, for instance. It can handle petabytes, can go to that scale. Probably there are other databases as well, but so far terabytes is, and commercially speaking, terabytes is a trend now. It used to be gigabytes, but now there's like databases are in terabytes. Could take any commercially, uh, you know, commercial sort of a database, and it would have terabytes of information there. Right. So coming back to the topic of the database, so there's a certain amount of difference between using a flat file and versus a database. So it's kind of, it's only a thin amount of difference. So the flat file, the amount of information you store is limited. With the database, the amount of information you're going to be stored is huge. So that's the first difference. So what happens when you store a lot of information on an Excel sheet? If you store like, let's say, several gigabytes of information in a single sheet, what happens when you open it? Yes, you know the answer. It wouldn't open. It'll say like it's trying to open, it's not able to open, it's trying to retrieve that information. That's another problem with the Excel sheets or any flat file. But even you have a notepad and you store several gigabytes of information, try to open it. Of course, it's dependent on the hardware, the the um, the kind of hardware you have. But essentially, the database is used for this sort of a purpose. Sometimes, let's say an insurance guy wants to open um, a file, uh, a document, like, let's say the document has several pages, hundreds of pages in it, and that information is being fetched from the database and provided, retrieved, and and processed and then provided in the front end to the insurance agent as a, uh, as the material that he has to look into. So this is where the database gets useful. So in this case, I'm accessing several amounts of data, several chunks of data I've retrieved and produced this as an output to the front end user. So I'm able to produce it, and I have an application that's capable of handling such a huge amount of data. So essentially, it's plainly, if you want to call a database, it's like a file, except that the file is able to do a lot more. A file or a directory or a disk drive or a partition, or it's a very big, it's a software system that's capable of handling a lot of data, and it's also able to organize. Um, it is also able to retrieve. It is able to to be written into with data, and it could be done. It could be dealt with a whole lot of other stuff. It could filter information for you. So so that's what the database is mostly about. I hope you get the information, at least a little bit. So the reason why I wanted to start with this is a pretty basic stuff, and it's you know I I wanted to explain this in a very simple manner without getting into the nitty gritty of the technical details, like with those raw definitions, saying like a database is a software that manages data, stores information as rows and columns, and it's able to organize and filter information for you and store it, and it's able to retain the data even during a catastrophe. Okay, enough of that. So that's how it would sound. So I basically wanted to be a little bit more grounded and give information in this way. So I hope it helps. If it doesn't, probably I'll try to do better in next videos. And so that's about it. Thank you very much for watching the video. We'll come up with another video probably tomorrow and come up with something which is interesting. So thank you.